Welcome to another episode of Mugshots and Coffee. I'm with an old friend, Jerry Carter, in College Station, Texas. What's the thought that you have for us?
Well, trying to look back at my life. That's what your questions. I thought last night. I said, well, what exactly am I trying to say? Because I've had such a good life with not much trauma. You know, my dad. The biggest thing that I missed about him was he traveled a lot. He was a traveling salesman for a large national company, so he wasn't home a lot. Usually gone 4 to 5 weeks at a time. Of course, back then, 4 or 5 weeks later, we didn't have cell phones and we couldn't talk. And this was a time when my mother was dying. She had cancer, and from about the time I was 14 to 16, like I say, he was gone. He was gone a lot of the time anyway. But I had nobody to really talk to about what I was feeling. That's tough.
Yeah.
All right. So, but I learned that from the early age, I enjoyed church. I enjoyed being around Christian people. I was a Christian at a young age, and that's usually a lot of our testimony. But I really didn't start getting into understanding that until I was 14, 15, 16. Because I found out, or I decided that the Lord would really give me a place to sound off. Did I get direct answers? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But my life and my friends led me to a point where I felt comfortable with my father not being there. And then having to live with that also, living with my mother dying in the house, it kind of made me look at life a little differently. I felt sorry for, not sorry, that's a bad word, but I felt sorry for folks who didn't have good parents, a mother or a father, that they were gone, they didn't care about their kids. Well, they both cared deeply about me. They dedicated me when I was born to the Lord. And that they wanted me to be the one of their 2 boys that they poured their life into. And they did. Okay, even with him being gone, he was always involved in music. He loved to sing. He loved to play the organ. He loved to play the accordion. He played the piano. He played the harmonica. He just was a really talented musical kind of person. Some of that rubbed off on me. Not much, but a little. I learned to play the accordion because of my dad, and it gave me, that's another thing that gave me peace during this time of him being gone, nobody to talk to, and my mother being able to listen and understand, but she was in a lot of pain. So anyway, I learned, like a lot of people do, that you have to get to a point depending on yourself rather than others. Because others, for whatever reasons, have a life and have to do the things they have to do. And as a young kid, you don't understand that. But it did when my mother passed away when I was 16. It really got to be me, because Dad was gone a lot. And he was a very loving person, and he did not like not having a wife. So he met my stepmother. And that really put sort of a permanent wedge in our relationship. We were still close, but that caused me to step away to some degree and say, okay, it's up to you to take it on your own, which is what I did. Since that time, I have literally been, I think, to some great deal, in charge of my own life. But I always loved the Lord. I've always been close to Him. I always knew that He had my back. And a lot of people don't understand how simple that is. It's just one little bit of faith that you turn yourself over and you say, God, I can't do it, but with your help I can. I grew up in Alabama, okay? I don't think you knew that, but I did. I grew up in the worst time to live in the South, be in Birmingham, Alabama. Race riots, hate. That was the time I grew up in. And part of that reached me after I left. I don't know, maybe you remember seeing the pictures of the black kids coming out of the churches in Birmingham on a particular square in downtown Birmingham and being hosed down by the fire department, beat with clubs by the police department. I sat there on the building steps of the Southwestern Bell building and saw that, and I'm thinking, gosh, this is not right, this is wrong. And that had probably, as far as the world goes, my biggest impact. Because I grew up, I hated black people. That's what you did in the South. You know, they were just slaves. And you're taught that. Very evil thinking. I even remember my church, where we went to church. One Sunday, this right after this happened, they passed a church rule or ordinance that they wouldn't allow black people into the church. They would turn them away at the door and tell them to go somewhere else. And from what I had learned about the Lord, I said, again, that's not right. That made a big, big impact in my long-term life, because I've been involved with the black community, black friends, close friends that I've loved. I was in the military with the blacks. I had no animosity. I just felt bad that they were struggling under what they had to suffer from. When I graduated from high school, I managed to go to summer school 2 years during my high school, because I didn't think I wasn't at the time smart enough to figure out that I thought I was dumb. Okay, so anyway, when I got out, I managed to get accepted to Auburn. So I survived there for about 6-8 weeks until I flunked out. And so I just up and left. And my dad didn't know where I was or anything, but I had just gone back to Birmingham to my grandmother's. So I decided about 2-3 years later, I worked at McDonald's. I got a job working for the Army Air Force Exchange Service, factoring computers back in the day of cards and big, huge sorters and that kind of stuff. But anyway, again, I decided this is not what I want to do for my life. And my brother said, well, Jerry, you ought to join the military, because you don't join, you will be drafted. You will end up in Vietnam. And I thought, well, if I've got to change my course, I might as well pick my own route. So I joined the Army. I was 19, and I was in the Army for 3 years. Enjoyed the time. It's what taught me, really, it taught me that the only course is to become educated. Teach yourself, learn a trade. And I did that. Started taking classes in the military. I was in Thailand. Fortunately, I did, since I joined up, I ended up in electronics, which I've loved most of my life. And I started taking courses, and I started making A's. And I said, wait a minute, something's not right here. That's not what I did. But anyway, I stayed with it. I was in for 3 years and enjoyed the time. I attribute that period of life to my success today more than anything else, because I could see what was ahead. All right. So when I got out, that's when I went to college. I said, okay, you can do it. Now's the time.
What was it that shifted your belief about that you could be smart, or that you could be?
Old crusty sergeant in the military says, Jerry, you can do, this was in Thailand, older guy, about 48, 50, older, you know, that's really old to somebody who's 19 or 20. He says, you have to make up your own mind. You're in the military, you've made rank in 2 years that you don't get until you're 5 or 6 or 7 years in the military. I was an E5 sergeant in 2 years. And I said, well, I just could never do it in school. And he says, yeah, you can. Put your mind to it. And so I put my mind to it. Like I say, I started taking courses, did good. When I got out, I had to go to Auburn and apply for not reinstatement, but clearing my record. And with my having been in the Army and talking to the dean, he says, yeah, we can take care of that. They changed everything from failure to withdrew failing, which removed it off of my grades and moved it out of my record. And so when I did start the school, I started with a blank page, so to speak, as far as that goes. And from that point forward, I started applying myself. It was the beginning of the computer world as we begin to know it today. Still, it was in cards and punch cards. But I learned that I loved it. Mm-hmm. And from that point forward, I just continued to move forward with that. It's always been part of my life. Ever since I've been in business, I've already added computers, used them, and all because of the time I spent in the military, which said, okay, you can do this. Military's hard. A lot of people say it was just, yeah, if you wanted to be nothing and just wanted to get through 3 years, yeah, you could just slide through as a private. But I didn't. So, you know, you're talking about role models, okay? My dad was a good role model, and I had a lot of role models through pastors from all of my churches. We became good friends. I was always involved in church after I got out of the military. But the biggest change in my life was when I met my wife. Met her at Cameron. That was where I was going to school. When I saw her, it was at the BSU. I was in assistant director of the facilities there. And so my job, I lived there, and my job was to meet people, greet people, all that kind of thing. And she walked up in September of 1968. And she said, hi, my name is Condi. I'd like to meet you guys. And I said, well, I like this young lady. And so anyway, taking that into it, 4 months later we got married. Now, that was quick. And I was having more fun at that time in my life as far as being out of the military, being in school, doing what I liked, and enjoying friends that I was much different about because I was older. I was like 4 years older than everybody else because I'd been in the military for the 3 years and then 2 years before I went in. So anyway, I met my wife, and on our first date, which was that weekend, I said, well, what do you want to do? You want to go to the movie, or you want to go? She said, well, how about we go downtown and witness to the soldiers? I said, that sounds like something that I can do, but did really impress me. And so there was the turning point as far as the rest of my life goes, because through her, who I love, and she loves the Lord like nobody I've ever known except for her father. Her father became my real role model because he was a Christian man. He loved God. He preached. He taught. He never left God out of anything. No matter if he was driving down the road, he'd pick up hitchhikers and he'd witness to them. He had a strong belief in the basis of God and the Bible and how you build your life on that level. He was really my mentor, like we talked about, someone who came into my life when I was 25. And I literally loved him. And I love my mother-in-law too. They were both wonderful people. But his ability to cut to the chase without making you feel bad or able to witness to you taught me a lot about life and what I needed to do. It's still hard for me because I'm not the necessarily outgoing person. As I said, when Condi said, "Let's go witness," I thought, wow, that's not something I'm really comfortable with. I love the Lord, but hey, telling people about it, that was difficult. But I got through it. I got over it, and I continued on, and I continued to stay close to the Lord during this time with my wife, my family. I believe it carried over definitely to my children, because we had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and I was fortunate. I was always with them all the time through their growing up until they literally went off to college. I was there. We were there at the house. So I was able to talk to them. Whether I gave them good advice, I have to think yes. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. I always told them that you have to rely on God. And I love it. I love them. They're the greatest single joy in my life at 75 of anything I've had before. So